No one expected the interview to turn explosive. It was supposed to be a light-hearted promotional appearance. Jamie Dornan discussing a new project, smiling through the usual questions about his career, dodging predictable mentions of 50 Shades. But when the interviewer casually shifted toward the topic of Dakota Johnson, something flickered across Jamie's expression, an unguarded softness, a hesitation too real to ignore. And then, in a moment that would ricochet across Hollywood within minutes, Jamie exhaled quietly and said, "We talked about marriage once, and even about a baby." The room froze. The crew stopped moving. The interviewer blinked rapidly, unsure if she had heard correctly, while Jamie seemed to realize that he had crossed a line he never intended to step over publicly. His posture stiffened for a moment, but the truth was already out, spreading through the studio air like wildfire. Within seconds, whispers erupted behind the cameras. A producer mouthed, "Are you serious?" The sound engineer dropped his headset. Even the usually unshakable PR representative looked stunned, frantically checking her phone as if hoping the moment hadn't been captured on every angle. But it had. Jamie tried to clarify, though his voice carried the unmistakable tremor of vulnerability. "It wasn't, an official plan," he said with a faint, almost nostalgic laugh. "But it was a moment. A conversation that meant something." He didn't elaborate yet, but the emotion behind his words was obvious. This wasn't a joke, nor a nostalgic throwaway comment. It was a revelation born from a place far more intimate than he had ever spoken from before. The interviewer leaned forward, sensing it, choosing her next question with surprising care. "Was it serious?" she asked. Jamie paused, eyes lowered, and when he finally responded, the honesty in his voice made the studio air tense with anticipation. "Serious enough that I still remember it," he said. "Serious enough that I still think about it sometimes." From that moment, the interview became something entirely different. The cameras captured a side of Jamie rarely seen, unguarded, thoughtful, almost fragile. He spoke about the years he and Dakota spent together on and around film sets, navigating unimaginable pressure while trying to maintain some sense of themselves. He described nights when they leaned on each other for emotional support, nights that blurred the line between friendship and something deeper. Something they both knew they could never fully embrace but could never avoid, either. "We had this connection," Jamie continued carefully. "A real one. People thought it was all acting, but some of those moments, some of those conversations, were very real." The interviewer asked about the marriage moment, and Jamie's face softened with memory. He explained that it happened during a period when both of them were exhausted, physically, emotionally, creatively. They had spent weeks shooting back-to-back scenes that demanded vulnerability, intimacy, trust. One night, after the cameras stopped rolling and the crew had gone home, they sat together on the edge of a quiet soundstage, talking about the future. About how strange it was that the world saw them as something more than co-stars, and how sometimes it felt easier to imagine a life where no one judged them, questioned them, or tried to tear them apart. "We joked about running away somewhere," Jamie said with a faint smile. "Somewhere quiet, no press, no expectations. Just life." And then he added, almost reluctantly, "I remember saying that in another life, we'd probably be married with a kid by now." He looked away as he said it, as if saying the memory out loud awakened something inside him that he wasn't sure he was ready to face. The interviewer, sensing the depth of the confession, asked gently, "And Dakota? What did she say?" Jamie hesitated, his expression tightening with a wave of emotion he tried to control. "She didn't laugh," he said softly. "She just looked at me for a long time. And she said, maybe in another life, or maybe even in this one, if things were different." That was the sentence that sent shockwaves across Hollywood. It implied choices, crossroads, feelings that went far beyond co-stars simply growing close over the years. It suggested a mutual awareness of something real, something that might have been but never could be. Jamie continued, admitting that Dakota had been his emotional anchor during some of the most stressful periods of his life. He said that when the world became too loud, too demanding, Dakota had a way of grounding him, of reminding him that he was more than fame, more than criticism, more than the enormous weight of public expectation. "She was stability," he said. And there was a time when I didn't have that anywhere else. His voice thickened slightly, the emotion pushing through despite his attempts to remain composed. He hinted that there were private conversations, moments of truth, even tears shared behind closed doors. Things fans never saw, things the media twisted, things only the two of them fully understood. The interviewer asked one final question before the studio fell fully silent. Jamie, do you regret not exploring that life with her? Jamie didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down, breathed in slowly, and gave a small, bittersweet smile. Regret, he whispered. I don't know if that's the right word, but sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if we hadn't been so afraid? And with that single sentence, Jamie Dornan didn't just reveal a memory. He revealed a truth Hollywood had been guessing at for years. The moment Jamie's answer settled into the air, raw, hesitant, and painfully honest, the interview room became impossibly quiet. Even the lights seemed to dim, as if giving him space to breathe after saying something he had clearly held inside for years. But before anyone could recover, the interviewer asked the question everyone in Hollywood had been dying to hear for nearly a decade. So, is that why you talked about having a baby with Dakota? Jamie closed his eyes for a brief second, a flicker of emotion tightening his jaw. When he opened them again, the heaviness was unmistakable. It wasn't a joke, he admitted softly. It was a real conversation. One we didn't plan to have, but one that happened because both of us were vulnerable in a way we couldn't hide from each other. He leaned back slightly, almost as if the memory itself pulled him in and weighed on him. Jamie explained that the baby moment happened during one of their most emotionally intense filming periods, a time when they were both dealing with personal pressures outside the set, while also carrying the global expectations placed on their on-screen partnership. One night, after a grueling day of shooting, they found themselves alone in a small rehearsal room lit only by a single lamp. They talked about life, about fear, about exhaustion, and then, almost unexpectedly, about family. I don't even remember who brought it up first, Jamie said quietly. All I remember is that for a split second, it felt like the idea didn't scare us. He revealed that Dakota had confessed she often wondered what kind of father he would be, and Jamie admitted he wondered what kind of mother she might become. It wasn't a plan, he said. It was a moment of imagining a parallel universe where things were simpler. Where we were free to choose each other without anything in the way. The interviewer, clearly stunned, pressed gently, Did you ever talk about it again? Jamie smiled, sadly, knowingly. No, and that's probably why the moment stayed with me. He explained that sometimes the most powerful conversations are the ones that happen once and are never repeated, the conversations that live in fragile silence because speaking them again would make them too real. He said he and Dakota both knew they couldn't cross that line in real life. There were relationships to protect, families to respect, careers to consider, and an entire world watching their every move. We were never alone, Jamie said. Even when it was just the two of us, it felt like millions of eyes were in the room. When the interviewer asked what Dakota thought about his unexpected confession now, Jamie hesitated, then revealed something that sent a fresh wave of shock through the studio. She called me, he said. Right after the clip went viral. She laughed first, but then, he paused, swallowing hard. She told me she remembered everything exactly the same way I did. He explained that Dakota told him she had kept those memories locked away because she didn't want to blur the line between what they had on-screen and what they meant to each other off-screen. She didn't want to ruin the stability Jamie had built in his personal life, and she didn't want to invite chaos into her own. She said we made the right decision, Jamie continued. But she also said that some things stay with you, even when they were never meant to happen. The interviewer listened, wide-eyed, before asking the inevitable question. Do you think you were in love with her? Jamie didn't flinch. Instead, he stared at the floor for a long moment, as if searching for an answer he had been avoiding. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I think we loved each other in the only way we were allowed to. Not romantically, not physically, but deeply, honestly, in a way that mattered. He explained that what they shared wasn't a forbidden romance or a hidden affair. It was something much quieter, much more complicated, And far more human. A kind of emotional partnership that held the weight of possibilities but never crossed into reality. He elaborated that Dakota had been the one person who understood his fears without him needing to explain them, and he had been the one who understood her silence when the world grew too loud. There was a version of us that could have existed, he said softly. One where timing was kinder. One where life didn't pull us in opposite directions. His eyes glistened, as if he were acknowledging that alternate life for the very first time out loud. But we didn't get that version. The final twist came when Jamie revealed something he had never admitted publicly. We saw each other a few months ago, he said. Privately, just the two of us. He didn't describe what they talked about, only that it lasted longer than either of them expected and ended with a kind of calm neither had felt in years. Dakota had hugged him before leaving and whispered, "In another life." Jamie didn't chase after her. He didn't ask what she meant. "I think," he said quietly, "we both understood." As the interview wrapped, Jamie offered one last sentence, one that would dominate headlines for weeks and send fans into a frenzy. "I never planned a life with Dakota," he said, "but I won't pretend I never imagined one." And with that, Jamie Dornan didn't just reveal marriage and baby plans. He revealed the emotional truth Hollywood had been waiting a decade to hear.